Good afternoon. Welcome to this Monday's meeting. We would like to start this meeting with a moment of silence for our good friend and longtime Rotarian George Simmons. We missed him at the golf tournament last week. We'll miss him in the meetings to come. So we'd like to start with a moment of silence for he and his family. Jim will lead us in the national anthem. Please remain standing, and Bob will lead us in invocation.
Let us pray. O God of us all, on this day, remind us once again of who we are as men and women created in your own image, as human beings created to be part of the earthly family, called to care for one another across geographical, political, cultural, and any other lines that seek to divide us. As Rotarians, pledge to do good in this world. So we give thanks today for our gathering in well-fed comfort and ask your blessings upon the food that sustains us in body and the relationships that enrich our lives. So we give thanks. Hear our prayer. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Bob. You may be seated. Matt Cannell is going to be coming to the front to welcome our visiting Rotarians and guests. If everyone at each table would lift up the cart bucket. If you have a dollar bill or some spare change, that's going to aid our Alzheimer's research.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We do not have any visiting Rotarians today, but I know we have some guests. I'd like to ask Stephen Creech to pass around the microphone. And if you have a guest with you today, if you would stand and introduce your guest.
Thank you, Matt. Lanier Jones, and my guest today is Karen Blackman from Russell Jeff Coach. She is the Relocation Development Director, and she's been with us several times, and we're glad to have you back with us today, Karen. Just give Karen a nice word of welcome.
I'm Jim Morris with the South Carolina Council on Economic Education, and we have Dr. Bruce Cole here with us. He teaches finance at the Darla Moore School with us.
Looks like that's it.
I've got one.
Oh, one over there. I'm sorry. Should have looked to the right.
I'm Mason Hardy with Creative Financial Strategies. Today, our guest, Karen Coltrane, brought a guest with her from EdVenture. This is Lewis Fawcett, the Vice President of Development.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Matt. Rusty DePass is going to be leading us in health and happiness. He's on his way to the front. He ditched his cane just for today. So Rusty, we're glad to see you all in one piece.
Greetings, fellow Rotarians and I do have some news today about our members and their families, and I want to bring to your attention, of course it's been mentioned already, about George Simmons having died unexpectedly about a week and a half ago. Also, he was not a member of this club, but I know many of you knew Murray Lyde, who made up here from time to time, and is certainly a longtime member of the Columbia community. Murray died on Friday. Funeral will be Wednesday. We also lost a real character from this town that I'm sure many of you knew. Billy Fox was written up in the newspaper this morning, died over the weekend, and certainly our thoughts and prayers go out to all these families. I might mention to you, I know that it's been mentioned here before, that Dot Ryle's son John, who many of us know, has cancer, very serious cancer, as a matter of fact. John has had an improvement here recently. He still has the cancer, but he has gained 18 pounds. He is lifting weights. He's gone to the beach. He still needs a miracle to get away from that cancer, but he's having some good days. And so we pray that that will continue, Doc, and our thoughts are certainly with you and your family. I'd also like to mention to you that I talked to Nancy and Mick Lurie not too long ago, and Mick is frail, but is doing reasonably well, and they are living in an assisted living facility in Atlanta near their son, so he can keep an eye on them. I spent the last weekend in Virginia at a 50th class reunion, and among the distinguished members of that class was a fellow by the name of Dick Payne, who was John Backus's roommate at the University of Virginia. Also, there was a fellow by the name of Billy Wink from Charlottesville, who was a good friend of mine and practices law now in Connecticut. And Bill Wink was responsible for my attending the first performance in the United States of the Beatles back in January of 1964. Now, I realize that was before many of you Wofford types were born, but anyway, Google the Beatles and see what you come up with. Also, there was a guy, John may know him as a matter of fact, a plastic surgeon from Lexington, Kentucky, named Henry Wells. And anyway, I thought Henry looked pretty good, and his wife looked real good. And so I said to Henry, you know, what can you do with a face like mine at our age? And he looked at me and he said, DePass, I'm a surgeon, I'm not a magician. We have some more news. I'm told that the University of South Carolina won 2 national championships over the weekend. One is the Women's Equestrian Championship, is that right? And the other one is bass fishing. So, hang in there.
Third national championship.
Third. Tom Perkins, on a more serious note, Tom Perkins is having surgery today to replace a 20-year-old pacemaker. Now that's real class when you can outlive your pacemaker. And also Sarah, his wife, who many of us know, fell recently and took a pretty bad fall apparently, and she broke her arm among other things and is wildly down. Hal Stevenson reports that his daughter Noelle has written a book which he described as a graphic novel. So I guess this will be an expose of the Stevenson family. No, I'm kidding. And I asked him what the name of the book was, and he demurred. I guess he doesn't remember, but he said he'd give the details to Carrie and she could put them on the website. But Noel's going to have a book signing at the Richland County Public Library downtown on Sunday, May the 3rd at 3 p.m. It sort of reminded me when I was working for Senator Thurman back in 1968, before these Wofford types were born. And I remember that Jim Lucier, who was the Senator's research director, happened to be in the office. I was in the office, and the Senator he'd written a book, and the title of the book was "The Faith We Have Not Kept." As a typical political book and so forth that I recommend to all of you if you can find a copy. But anyway, and so the Senator was saying to somebody on the telephone, I'm not going to try to outdo Glenn, but he said, "Now you got to get a copy of my new book." And obviously the person said, "Well, Senator, what's the name of it?" He said, "We have not kept the faith." And Jim was saying, "No, Senator, it's not that. We have not." And so he didn't know the name of his own book. But anyway, so much for that. I had some more stuff that I'm going to do away with, but I do want to tell you about. A 100-year-old lady by the name of Hattie Mae McDonald of Fee, Kentucky, who was being interviewed by a local reporter about and asked for some health tips on reaching the age of 101. She said, "Well, for better digestion, I drink beer. In the case of appetite loss, I drink white wine. For low blood pressure, I drink red wine. In case of high blood pressure, I drink scotch. And when I have a cold, I drink schnapps." The reporter says, "Well, when do you drink water?" She said, "I've never been that sick." and finally, our federal government, which has Tomahawk cruise missiles, Apache, Black Hawk, Kiowa, and Lakota helicopters, and used the code name Geronimo in the attack that killed Osama bin Laden, officially objects to the name of the Washington Redskins. Just a thought for the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rusty. John Bakis is now going to come up and give us a recap from our golf tournament we had last Monday in Windermere.
I know, he's wearing a jacket.
Good afternoon. My friend Dickie Payne went to school with Rusty, has told me some interesting things about Rusty, but I'll defer on that today. Maybe sometime when we're in a smaller group, I can talk about that a little bit. I'm up here to talk about the golf tournament and how much fun we had. It was a smaller group than usual, but I think everybody had twice as much fun to make up for the numbers that we didn't have in attendance. I especially want to thank the volunteers who came out to help us put it on. The golf committee, Carl Byers couldn't be here today to be recognized, but he did a tremendous amount of work, and we all did it in a very short time. So I want to thank golf committee volunteers, and I want to thank the folks that played in it. I want to thank whoever it was that helped us with the weather. I don't know if any of you saw the weather forecast Monday morning. Carl and I had a long discussion about canceling the tournament at about 10 o'clock. And we came about that close to doing it. And we said, no, let's go ahead, let's give it a try. Well, the weather forecast said, okay, it's going to start pouring down rain at 11 o'clock. And then we watched it a little longer, and then it was pouring down rain at 12, and then it was 3, and then it was 4, and then it was 6, and it finally came at about 6. So we were so lucky to get that in. It was remarkable, but we had a great time, and I thank all of you for participating. And I think we probably raised enough money between those who played golf and the sponsors we had to do another Pack to Feed program at Harvest Hope this fall. So that's good. We didn't raise the big money like we used to, but that was our intent, to raise enough money to do a Harvest Hope event. And I think we probably have done that. So thank all of you. We are going to try to do it again next year, and we're going to work a little harder, maybe make it a citywide Rotarian golf tournament. We talked a little bit about that, and inviting all of our fellow Rotarians across the community to join us in a combined effort. So anyway, thank you for your support in terms of contributions and volunteering. We appreciate it a whole lot. Thank
As the club, we want to thank John. John and his club, Windermere, do a great job putting on that event each year for the club, and we're very thankful to him and his committee for all we do. In our winning team, we're very thankful for what they do for our club. Our winning team this year was Hal Stevenson, who is a past president, Mark Sullivan, the incoming president, Stephen Creech, our club treasurer, and Bob Millhouse, the treasurer. I'm sorry, Stephen's the secretary. But we're very appreciative of all they do for our club this year, the volunteer hours they put in. We would like Mason Hardy now to come up and introduce our program.
Thank you, President John. Most of y'all know I have a nonprofit background, having spent some time with the South Carolina Association of Nonprofit Organizations years ago. Currently, I serve on the board of EdVenture. I'm a brand new board member. I was not on the recruiting committee that went out to search for Catherine's replacement, but the recruiting committee did come back and bring to us a unanimous opportunity to select somebody to now be our new leader at EdVenture. And I have to tell you all, with my background, that we are extremely fortunate in Columbia to have this new president and CEO at EdVenture. I'm going to read her bio, but you're only going to see the tip of the iceberg in her qualifications. She's outstanding, and we're very lucky to have. Karen Coltrane is the new president and CEO of EdVenture Children's Museum. She's worked with nonprofit organizations for the past 25 years, focused on leadership and governance, fundraising, marketing, and public relations. After starting her career as a bank officer with Signet Bank in Virginia, Karen moved to the nonprofit sector, where she was hired by her alma mater, the College of William and Mary, to be the director of annual giving, where she also served as a major gifts officer during the university's campaign for the 4th century. Since then, she has served in external relations positions for healthcare, national trade associations, and human service organizations. Most recently, she served as the president and CEO of the Children's Museum of Richmond, the first children's museum in the nation to open satellite locations. Her groundbreaking work there was recognized when she was named the Richmond YWCA, by the Richmond YWCA as the 2012 Outstanding Woman of the Year for Nonprofit Management. In addition to her professional work, she has also been an active volunteer, including service as a regional president and member of the National Board of Trustees of Big Brothers Big Sisters of America. She chaired the first Central Virginia Art Gallery and has served on numerous nonprofit boards throughout Central and Southeast Virginia. Please welcome Karen Coltrane.
I'm a little shorter than Mason, and that introduction, I'm afraid, makes me sound a lot more important than I probably am, but I thank you for the warm welcome. I'm very excited to be in South Carolina. Mason mentioned that I actually served on the board of Big Brothers Big Sisters of America, which is true, and one of the in that role, I actually got to work with Congress a bit when Big Brothers Big Sisters was having a big anniversary, and I actually met the senator that we were talking about before, Senator Thurmond from South Carolina, and he didn't know what Big Brothers Big Sisters was either. So, so I got to tell him that, which was very exciting for me. But at any rate, I am as Mason said, I'm a transplant from Virginia and very excited to now be a South Carolinian. I made it through the DMV with my husband. We were very excited about that because we'd been told that that was quite a challenge. And we only got sent home once for additional documentation, but I am now really a South Carolinian and very, very excited to be one. So again, I thank you for the warm welcome and everyone who's welcomed us to the state. And I'm excited to tell you about EdVenture. I know you probably already know a lot since Catherine Horn was a member of this organization. But I thought I would go ahead and give you my version of a children's museum. And it's probably going to surprise you a little bit, but let's see if I can get the technology to work. Here we go. When I talk about children's museums, it's funny because, and I'm getting this a lot because they're trying to fill my position up in Richmond right now, and I get calls from people who say, oh, I bet that's a wonderful job. I just love children. And my answer back to that is, well, don't love your own because you won't see them very much when you're trying to raise as much money as you need to run a children's museum. I don't get to spend a whole lot of time with children, but I'm very excited that the work that I do allows people to spend quality time with children. Really what a children's museum is all about is the nexus of neuroscience and economic development. That often throws people off when I speak to them about children's museums because they think, no, I thought you were going to talk about a fun play place for kids. And while a museum, a children's museum is that, there's a whole lot underneath. The tip of the iceberg is the museum you see. And I want to talk to you a little bit about neuroscience and economic development. I promise I won't make it too boring because we're a children's museum, we're supposed to be fun. But I think you'll see how these two intersect, and they do it right down the street at EdVenture. Children's museums are actually brain factories. And again, I'm not going to bore you with a lot of neuroscience, but just so you know, the brain is the only organ incomplete at birth. And you might wonder why. You know, everything else seems to function in a baby human, but the brain needs experiences to wire up. Babies' brains actually have more cells than our own brains, and if you've been around babies and little people, you might realize that. But they're unorganized. They need to have experiences. That's what creates the cell movement that develops the synapses. And there's a whole lot of, you can speculate as to why this is the case, but when a baby is born, it needs to really understand what environment it is for its brain to be built correctly. But we have a real short window of time we're finding. The more that neuroscience advances, the more we're able to understand how the human brain works. We're really seeing that while we think of education starting when school starts, the most important education of a human being's life happens way before school starts. So by the age of 3, the brain actually begins to prune back parts of itself that it has decided it's not going to use. And really the most obvious example of this is in language development. If you notice that a young child is capable of learning any language that's spoken in the world, take you in high school or college and put you in a language class and it's not that easy. That's because the brain has already pruned back many of the things that it needed in order to understand and hear language. Children's museums use play to further development. Now, Lewis and I go out and ask people for money to give to the museum, and sometimes we'll hear, well, but isn't it just kind of a fancy play place for kids? And I say enthusiastically, absolutely, and that's why it needs your support. Because play is how children learn. Sometimes as adults, if we don't know that, we might think, well, they're engaged in a pleasant pastime. Look at them having fun in the museum. But play is how children learn. They don't learn by sitting in little miniature desks with a teacher in front. That happens later. Developmentally, young children are not ready for that. And remember, they're learning the most important things they can learn before school ever starts. That's how the brain gets wired up. It's like building a house. That you get your architecture set. It's much harder to get your walls hung straight if your framing is not right. And that's what's going on in the early years, is the brain is developing the scaffolding and the framing to be right for all the additional learning. I kind of explain it this way. I'm a former banker, so I kind of go back to my financial principles. If you talk to people in financial services, I know Mason does this too, you want to save early because you want to enjoy the compounding as a result of that savings. And the brain develops in exactly the same way. Learning adds on and layers. So the sooner you do the learning and get it right, the better able the brain is to learn later. And that has some real fundamental impacts for education and the success of education later on. So play is actually a biological drive that's hardwired into humans and animals. If you ever watch puppies, lion cubs, or whatever, they play. They play. If you really look at what they're doing, though, they're learning their world. They go out of bounds with their play, and somebody slaps them back into place. That's how they learn. Play is essential to developing social skills, adaptability, intelligence, creativity, and the ability to solve problems. Now, if I go out and talk to CEO of a major manufacturing or other type of company and say, what is it that you want in employees? They say social skills, adaptability, intelligence, creativity, and the ability to problem solve. That's what employers want, and that's what we have going on at EdVenture and in all of our programs. So we are very cognizant of the fact that we have the workforce of, 2035 or so, right over on Gervais right now. Well, it's Monday, we're not open. But any other day, we have them right over there right now. And that's, let's see, problem solved didn't pop up there. Look at that, we needed to solve that problem. At any rate, that's what we're working on as far as education. And I'll just put my little plug in here. These skills are vital to the success of our country going forward. They've been vital, and they're why we're successful now. You know, I hear people say, well, but you know, I get so concerned because I hear the United States kids take these tests and we rank low on the test. I would submit to you that all that means is that maybe we're just not great test takers. I don't know that that's really telling us anything about what we need to know. Content changes so fast. I can get the answer to almost anything at the end of a Google search. So content isn't it, it's the ability to think through, be innovative. That's what the United States has always been known for, and because that's what we do. Our educational system in the past has produced that. I will tell you that you know, we're looking to other countries with higher test scores and saying maybe we need to emulate them. I will tell you that Chinese and particularly Asian countries are over here coming to study what we do, because while they can pump out a lot of copies of anything, they want to learn how to innovate. And I see it all the time up in Richmond, being near Washington, D.C., when these delegations would come over from Asia and they want to learn about our educational system, their first stop is our children's museums, because they're watching us and they can see now that that is where you create creative, interesting, problem-solving kids who have just a joy and a passion for learning how things work and figuring out how to make them work better. So that's a lot of what we're about. Our exhibits are designed to build the brain's architecture through challenging and fun experiences. So again, if you've walked through the Children's Museum, you think, oh, kids are having fun. There's a whole lot more going on there. They're designed to specifically have children's brains be developed by interaction with the exhibits. So the core purpose of EdVenture is to make people love to learn. I say, if your child or grandchild came running up to you and said, I love to learn, you wouldn't worry about that child anymore. You'd say, he or she's got it, they're going to figure it out, how can I help you learn? So that's what we're about. So why do we need to love to learn? Well, children who love to learn tend to be school ready. Children who are school ready tend to become successful learners. And if you're a successful learner, then you're job ready. So that's the continuum. And we got a few headwinds right now. South Carolina, only 28% of our fourth graders are reading proficient. Okay? Only 28% are reading at or above proficiency. That's important. One of the strangest things, although it isn't when you stop to think about it, is if you're a municipality and you're trying to figure out how many jails you need to build in the future, the consultants that you hire to help you determine that, you want to know what statistic they look at? Third grade reading level. If they know the third grade reading level, they can tell you how many jail cells that you need to have 10, 15, 20 years out. So that's a very important number, and at EdVenture, we're putting plans together to help address that. As are a lot of other people, and we're working together with them. South Carolina ranks 45th in child well-being out of 50. And I don't think any of us would be proud of that. So we're gonna, again, we're focusing in on these things with the resources that EdVenture has. We're gonna try to make a difference in this, again, with our partners. The most powerful predictor of later achievement is a student's approach to learning. So I go back to, if you love to learn, if gathering in information and you're naturally curious, it's the most powerful predictor of later achievement, no matter if you strip out socioeconomic, any other factors. Okay? So why does school readiness really matter? Well, again, I'll go back to these reading levels. Nationally, about 1/3 of our students nationally are reading below proficiency levels. But that 1/3 makes up almost 2/3 of the kids who don't graduate from high school. And the kids who don't graduate from high school cost all of us a lot. There's the opportunity cost of what they could be doing for our country, and not only in the cost to them. And then if they require additional support, it's expensive. Okay, again, I'll remind you, that flip of that other statistic I said, 72% of South Carolina 4th graders read below level. So I promised you neuroscience meets economic development. Improvements in educational outcomes produce a long-term return to society of $8.24 for every dollar invested. That was a study by the Annie E. Casey Foundation, a national organization, in the first 6 years of life. And if you think about it, that makes a lot of sense. If you can get the child ready to learn, excited to learn, and ready for kindergarten, then all the money that you spend later on remedial things you can use towards some other purpose. So the return is very high in this. And key workforce skills such as motivation, persistence, and self-control are developed early. You can talk to a kindergarten teacher about this. That self-control, it's called executive function. For any of you with an education background, I want you to know I know how to use the right term. Executive function is that ability to control your behavior. And I'm sure you've seen kids who don't exercise executive control, probably out at dinner or places like that. That is one of the most important factors to educational achievement, is the ability to control. It's much higher correlation to success in school than even IQ. And again, that second one, actually James Hickman is a Nobel Prize winning researcher, and this came from the National Conference of State Legislatures. So there's a lot of momentum forming around, if we can fix problems early with children, help them overcome obstacles early, it pays rich dividends, not only once they hit school, but for the rest of their lives, and dividends that benefit our entire society. So that's what underpins what a children's museum is all about. And now I want to talk about EdVenture specifically. It's the largest children's museum in the Southeast. A $4.6 million budget, 40 full-time employees, so it's quite a thing, and it's a very impressive thing when you consider that this organization only opened its doors in 2003. I've had, it's been remarkable to me how many people have said since I've moved to Columbia, why'd you move to Columbia, South Carolina from up in Virginia? And I say, well, it's because you have one of the best children's museums in the nation. And they go, we do? And so it's very clear to me that we've got some work to do to help our city and our state understand what a resource EdVenture is, because there are cities 2, 3, 10 times the size of Columbia that don't have anything as strong as EdVenture in the community. So if you haven't been by, please grab a kid and come on in. We'd love to see you. We'll add you to the 200,000 total annual visitors we already have coming through. We have 2,300 member families. We end up with 1,500 summer campers. I haven't been here in a summer yet, but I'm looking forward to seeing that. Some things you might not know is we do after-school programs in 14 Richland 1 and Richland 2 schools. So again, another real distinguishing factor for EdVenture that other children's museums don't do is this incredible plethora of activities and programming outside the museum's walls. So when I say the museum is the tip of the iceberg, it really is. There's probably not another children's museum in the country, and there's 300 of them roughly, that has the extensive amount of programming that EdVenture has out in, we do cooking classes in low-income neighborhoods. We do health education all over the state. There's a lot going on, and we've got a big story to tell. We do professional development for South Carolina school teachers, helping them learn how to use play and informal learning to really excite children in their classrooms, which is, I think, what the pendulum's going to swing back to. We've been all about testing for content, and what we're learning after a generation of this is that that's not producing what employers want and need. So like I said, that pendulum is coming back to how do you get people excited about learning and make them lifelong learners, because quite frankly, the amount of content in the world is doubling every couple years. It's hard to master that. You've got to know how to get new information. We have 235 and counting community partnerships. So we are always working with other organizations. It's how you leverage the limited resources that we have in the nonprofit world. So when we look to EdVenture's future, now I want to remind you I have 3 whole months on the job, so don't hold me to everything, but the future's revealing itself, I think, and we're starting to see where we're going to go. We can kind of divide our world into 2 halves. One is our mission and service, sort of what we do for the community and why we exist. Yes, Every Child is a unique initiative that EdVenture started several years ago, and it's about opening up access to the museum. Mason mentioned that I have some in my background, some healthcare experience. I always liken the Children's Museum's business model to that of a hospital. Hospitals have to perform plastic surgeries and kind of high-end, expensive things to be able to generate enough income to offer the charity care through the emergency room. Children's museums are very similar to that. We do birthday parties and really cool, fun things for kids that helps us generate additional revenue that allows us to open up the museum to families who can't afford to be there. Since this initiative started, we've had 38,000 visitors through that have paid little, either $1 or nothing to attend the museum. We have a NASA-sponsored flight exhibit on the way. Again, this is very wonderful because NASA doesn't give these grants out to everyone. It's very unique. EdVenture is very fortunate to have it, and we're working with NASA right now to develop an exhibit that will open in 2016, and it'll be about the role of flight so that children can get excited about that. There'll actually be a model of a fuselage in the museum. I think it's going to be impressive to see. Other museums that have had these NASA flight exhibits have seen their attendance go up significantly. So we expect the same thing, as we'll be the only one in the region with this. We want to grow that programming that I told you about even further. We're getting asked to do it. We're getting some corporations locally have seen what we've done in the greater Columbia area and are asking us to push that out further, and we are considering that. The first step in that might be some type of mobile museum. We know we want to do some work in the I-95 corridor that could really use what we bring, so we're exploring that. And we may even have possible new locations on the horizon. So that's a little bit where we're looking at on that side. On the financial side of the house, we are trying to increase both earned income and most likely our endowment as well. Of the $4.6 to $5 million budget, we raise about 54% of it. We earn about 46% of it. That's a little lopsided from our industry. Typically, in children's museums, you would earn about 60% of your revenue and you would fundraise for about 40%. So we've got a little bit of work to do there on our business model. So I get asked a lot, how can the community help and be involved? First of all, know and tell others that Columbia is the home to one of the best children's museums in the nation. I promise you, you're not teasing them. It's true. It's a real benefit for Columbia, for South Carolina. And was part of the reason I came here was I was at Richmond, which was one of the few children's museums in the nation to have no public support. No local, state, federal, no support in it. It was you either raised it or you earned it. Our budget was 80% earned income, one of the highest in the nation. But I will tell you, it couldn't have the quality that all of us associated with it wanted it to have, because it needs that third leg of the stool. And part of the reason I came here was because I could tell that the city of Columbia, Richland County, Lexington, other areas had invested in this museum. You can tell that the community cares about this museum. But what I'm finding is that not everybody knows that it's one of the best. Because if it's sitting in your hometown, you might not know that. So it is. It's one of the many things that we can brag about in the capital of South Carolina. We can always use help volunteering. The person who happens to oversee HR and all that is a member of your club, Leslie. Go see her. She would love to help make that happen. We need volunteers for our events on the museum floor. I can tell you there really is no more joyful volunteer experience than volunteering at EdVenture. The kids hit the door and they know that that place was built for them, even if they've never been there before. It's fun. We can always use supplies. We have a maker space where kids get to really build those innovative muscles. I don't know if you know this or not, but again, back to neuroscience, if you are, you can do activities with a child or yourself that are left brain, activities that are right brain. But what the brain needs is that synergy of moving between the two halves. And when they do MRI studies on the brain, the one activity that lights up both sides of the brain is the creation of art projects. So while we think art, again, is one of those nice to haves, it's actually the best way to build the synapses in a brain, because art or a maker space requires that a child envision something and then they have to build it. So they're working both sides. So if you have children or grandchildren around, even if you're not at the museum, encourage them to do those kinds of activities, because no better way to build that brain than through that type of activity. In order to help us offer that, we can always use donations of supplies. Typically when people get to know a children's museum and become friends with it, they never throw away another paper towel roll or toilet paper roll or pipe cleaner or any type of material you have around. We can use all of it, and we'll put it to good use in that space and allow children to be able to make things that whatever their imagination can dream. If you really want to get involved with us, we love to have our exhibit sponsored. I can tell you we got Mr. Potato Head coming this summer. Anybody remember playing with Mr. Potato Head? He's coming. And we think this is going to be very exciting for us. We try to bring in a cool exhibit every summer, while we also make cool exhibits throughout the year. But we love to have those sponsored by organizations. It's a great thing if you have a company and you think, you know, I want the community to see that I care about the children in the community. It's a very visible way to do that. You can participate in our fundraising events. We always need sponsors. We always need people to attend. So we have 3 big ones a year. We just had one last week called Girls Night Out. We work with Copeland's, great friend of the museum. This was the 13th year. They bring in a big designer, and if you tend to be female, guys are invited, but I didn't see a whole lot of them there, and don't blame them. It's pretty estrogen-filled, fun evening. But that's a great fundraiser. Frost is our formal, and then we do a storybook ball in the fall that is for kids and families. So I would be happy, I think I have a couple minutes, to answer any questions you have. Yes?
What's the typical age of the children that come there? What is the age range?
The age range is birth to 12. I would say the typical age is probably somewhere right around the middle of that, the 7 to 8, although there's plenty to do younger. And the Maker Studio appeals to people who are up to 100. Or beyond. Yes?
Are you tied in with the State Museum? I know you guys are almost co-located. Is there any commingling or partnership there?
Well, we want there to be, and we're going to explore that. It's a little tough because that's a state organization, it's a state run organization, and we're a private nonprofit. It was ironic because I had the exact same situation in Richmond. The Children's Museum sat across the parking lot from the Science Museum of Virginia in downtown Richmond. And I think planners always think it's awesome to kind of cluster museums. What we find though is that people don't tend to visit 2 museums in one day, particularly if they have children under the age of 12. A one visit is kind of exhausting, and that tends to be a one-off. But I think there is some synergy, and I think there are a lot of partnership opportunities we have. Yes?
Yeah, hey.
Hi.
Coming from a successful career in an artist, established institution, and combining your talents, what's been your biggest challenge so far? Just first couple months.
Biggest challenge so far? I would have to say probably, well, my biggest surprise has been what the community doesn't realize it has an EdVenture. That's been my biggest surprise. I think the biggest challenge is that when you assemble a lot of people to work in a museum environment, not just a children's museum, but any, they tend to be there for the mission side. And like I showed you, there's 2 sides. You've got the financial sustainability side. So I think, you know, like most organizations, we have some work to do to help our board, help our staff, and everybody understand that, you know, we got to combine mission and financial sustainability. If it's not financially sustainable, it's probably not something that we can do long term. And we don't want to go out and start programs that have to come back because of lack of funding. So what we like to do is find several backup plans underneath each one of those programs so that it doesn't have to end and it can build on itself. Yes?
No, under the financial sustainability part, there was going to be an effort to increase revenue streams. Under the, I'm in the catering business, and under the event side, you know, you also do a lot of rentals, and is that going to be part of the plan, and also the cafe space that was closed?
The cafe space is open. Right before I got there, we entered into a contract with the company to provide meals during the day. The ability to have events in there is very helpful to the museum. It's certainly dollars that we count on that help us balance our budget, but it is not, I wouldn't call it a huge line item for the museum, but we certainly, you know, it's a beautiful facility. I encourage anybody who wants to have a unique and fun event to take a look at it, especially with the, you know, frontage on the canal. It's really lovely. But I think I'm trying to remember the dollar amount. It's less than 1% of the museum's budget currently, but more is always better. Yes?
You mentioned that you'd like for us to try to provide y'all with like the paper tubes and things. How would we go about getting that to you if we start saving them up?
Walk right into the front door and hand them to the folks at the front desk. They will thank you profusely. There's not a tax write-off for toilet paper rolls. If there was, we'd give you a tax receipt. If you give us something that the IRS will consider a value, we will definitely give you a tax receipt. But those items tend to be just, you know, you carry them around in a bag in the back of the car, you get sick of them, run them, just pull up in the front, keep the car running, run them in. We will be happy to have them. Yes?
Hi, I'm Sonny White, I'm your neighbor.
Yes, you are.
Up until a month and a half ago, I ran one of the technical colleges here in Midlandstead. And to back up your point about early childhood education, we spend $21 million in the state of South Carolina on remedial education at the technical college level, all related mainly to the inability to read, if you do that.
Yeah, you know, EdVenture has done amazing work in STEM. I think most of you probably heard that term, the acronym for science, technology, engineering, and math. And we're not going to stop that. But we are probably going to layer in even more deeply literacy. Because if you don't have that, you can't get to STEM. If a child can't read, they can't learn anything else down the road. So that's an area in which we are going to start to focus like a laser. You know, I started in higher ed, my nonprofit career, and I always joke that I've worked my way all the way down. But I will tell you that I really haven't. And part of what keeps me where I am in early childhood education, because quite frankly, I personally relate much better to college students than I do to little tiny people. I loved my own, but I believe strongly that if we're going to fix a lot of the societal issues we have and in education, it's going to have to happen at the early childhood level. So when I look at, you know, I'm 50 now, and I don't know how many more years I've got left to work, but those years I want to spend them where I can have a maximum impact on the world around me. And I believe it's in early childhood. I believe that is how we change the problems that have persisted for years. If every child started kindergarten ready to learn, you wouldn't have to spend that much money at Midlands Tech. Yes?
Along that line, Karen, my artist daughter is a prolific tweeter. She tweets all day, really a lot of nonsense. She did say something that I thought you would like to hear, and I thought perhaps the rest of the club would like to hear on that point. She said the idea that art comes strictly from within and goes out is super not true. The truth is, art goes into you first from the moment you're born and then goes out. So she may be a little poster child for you one day.
Well, thank you. I actually raised quite the strapping little athlete. And when I went to work at the Children's Museum, he was, I guess he was 7 years old. And I turned him loose on the Children's Museum in Richmond, and I said, go play in there and come back and tell me what exhibit you like the best. And this is a boy who played football, basketball, and baseball, and there's no season even to take a vacation when that's your schedule. So I fully expected the climber or something, some gross motor thing to get him. And he came into me, and he had a piece of paper, and he said, my favorite exhibit's the art studio. And I was like, what? Because I knew that Tuesday was art day at his elementary school when the mean lady with the art cart rolled through, and I'd have to hear all complaints about it all Tuesday night about how much he hates art. And he said, I loved it. I said, well, you hate art. Why did you like the art studio? And he proudly held up his picture of a UVA guy in a UVA helmet beating up a guy in a Virginia Tech helmet. And he said, because I got to draw whatever I wanted. And I never get to do that in school. And I will tell you that that is actually the very moment that I realized that what I was doing, I realized what I was doing and why I was doing it. Because he did need art. He actually turned out to be a very creative guy. Clemson University offered him like almost a full ride for engineering, and he said, nah, I'm going to the College of Charleston and major in, you know, liberal arts or business or something completely different. And again, I can't completely draw it back to that moment in the art studio where he had a revelation, but I do believe that is true. Well, I'm 2 minutes past my time, so I know I'm supposed to end. But thank you all. You've been wonderfully kind. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Karen, thank you. On behalf of the club, we have this for you.
Thank you very much.
I have a little 5-year-old and 3-year-old boy, and some of our best memories have been at EdVenture. So we thank you and your staff for all that you do.
Thank you.
Next week's speaker is going to be Joey Von Nussen, who is a research economist who's going to be updating us on the state of the South Carolina economy. And a quick reminder to all our board members, we're going to have a short board meeting over here at this table. And with that, Jim Smithwick will close with My Country 'Tis a Freedom.